second question was just around the arches, the low line. This is all really fantastic stuff. Network Rail are really pushing profitability from these arches, and I'd really like some reassurance from you that the council is also looking at affordability of these arches, so that they, as well as being chain restaurants, which we all love to go to, they can also be used by local businesses and community groups where appropriate.
Absolutely, it's about getting that balance. I mean, it's important to remember that all the arches and actually the land just either side of them is owned by Network Rail, not the council, although we have some leases in some isolated cases. The mission or the goal that Network Rail have been set by government, which is completely understandable, is to generate as much income as possible from their portfolio, their land holdings across the country as possible to help subsidise rail fares, which is an understandable aim. Whenever I meet with Network Rail and officers meet with Network Rail, we are very clear with them. Yes, we understand they've got to get a return on investment. Yes, they've got to make it worthwhile to invest in those arches to bring them into use and make a return to help subsidise everyone's rail fares. But they've also got to be affordable for businesses in Southwark. And we've got a good working relationship with Network Rail. They've had some personnel changes recently, particularly on their commercial arm, and we don't always get our way with them, but it is going forwardly quite well.
Mark, I'm going to push you a little bit to bit punchier with the answers.
No,
it's interesting information. Don't deny that, but we just in terms of time. There we go. That's great, Catherine.
Thank you very much. Can I ask you a question about consultation on this plan? So, from being a relatively new councillor and sitting on the planning committee a couple of times, I realised that when it comes to a planning application being put before the planning committee, there's such strict rules around whether or not things can be accepted, and a lot of them are determined. The level at which we can determine those rules ourselves are very much to do with what is in this plan. Therefore, it's extremely important that people take the opportunity to comment on this. But it's a massive document. It's clear and it's readable, but kind of actually getting people to process the information at the right level is still a challenge. And also balancing the personal interests that local people have with expertise that you've presumably, we know has input into how these plans have been developed, is also quite a balancing act. Could you comment on how the consultation process is going and how successful it's going to be in that balance of thinking about what's important and hearing from local people about what is important and balancing that with kind of expert views on what will be great for the future of the borough?
Okay. So the consultation, this has gone in several stages. This is the preferred option of the new Southwark plan. We've already consulted on the options and issues version, which had options in there where we weren't sure what the future policy direction was, and that's been consulted on. This preferred option is setting out our stall more clearly, and the consultation goes on for a few more weeks. And we've also just started, it's going to carry right on over the next 3 or 4 months and past May, is more targeted consultation on the area visions, because what there's going to also be in this plan is for every area of the borough there'll be an area vision of saying in Camberwell or Dulwich or the Blue or wherever, this is our planning policies and this is what we want to see for the future. And we're hoping that by doing that, one, we can make the plan which is at a borough level maybe doesn't mean that much to some local residents, but if we can hone right in and say, if you're interested in the Blue, or you live in the Blue, and around the Blue or Camberwell or wherever, that it kind of makes it more real to you and those specific changes you'd like to see in your local area. So the consultation will run on for many more months, and then we have to go through for more consultation and examination in public before we can adopt it. So we're trying to reach out as much as we can. So everybody, encourage all members here to local TNRAs and other groups to write out to them. We'll be doing that as well, and encourage people to fill this in, because the more people that have, they say, the better. We're also looking, and I'm not sure we've got an answer on this yet, but we're also looking, going back to the early conversation about IT, we're also seeing if it's possible via our planning portal to ask for consultation comments from anyone that's ever commented on a planning application. We'll see if we can do it. Hopefully we can reach out many thousands and thousands and thousands of people, or at least some of them.
Okay.
Can I just ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that just sort of saying, please look at this plan and please comment? Or is it more sophisticated than that?
It's a bit of that, but it's more sophisticated. I'm going to hand over to Juliet.
Yeah. We'd set out about the sort of big things that we think people are interested in, particularly around housing and jobs, and sort of try and do strap lines to say, if you're interested in this or this, then we can implement. We're trying to break it all down into smaller pieces so people can just look at the one or two things. And when it gets onto the visions, I think that's where people will be really interested in.
Yeah.
So we've done a map of all of the areas now. So we're putting that on the web to try and get people interested. The vision questions are also on the web, but they're not as exciting as I'd like them to look. So we're trying to get people interested, make things more interesting.
We also know that some community groups are doing some of this work themselves. So the SE5 Forum, for example, are currently consulting on their vision for the future of Camberwell. And when I spoke at their AGM a few months ago, I said, look, come up with your area of vision, have a bigger vision for Camberwell, and if we can embed a lot of that or all of that into our planning policy, then we will. So it's not just you coming up with a broad statement, we'll put it in the plan and then it'll actually make a difference over the next 15 years of development. So anything like that, if people are interested or got ideas on, please do let us know.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anu.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Mark. I've got sort of two linked questions, really. So, as you know, the thing that I go on a lot about that breaks my heart is seeing developments which are 100% luxury flats being sold off abroad and not getting the affordable housing on site. I think mixed communities are the most important, best thing about this borough, and I think it's tragic every time there's a development that's not mixed. Obviously the policy says a minimum of 35%, but we regularly see that not happen on site. And I just wondered whether there is any feeling that that is something, I mean it says in on page 22, affordable housing on site, and if this is not possible off site, whether there's any more strength that can be put in this document, whether we can actually say it's really important that it's on site for mixed communities, actually recognise the diversity of the borough in all its communities is what makes it special. So that's kind of my first point there. And then linking to that really is a big concern which I've raised with officers about the change to the tall buildings. Well, frankly, having no criteria at all is what I understand. So it used to be quite specific that tall buildings were in certain places in the borough, that they were designated, and that the definition of a tall building was clear. And I'd be interested to know what the reasons for kind of changing that definition. But also, I suppose if there isn't criteria for tall buildings, it's going to be up to planners to kind of interpret what's a tall building. I think the phrase on page 43 is basically about whether they're appropriate. And I think it's all very well for people in this building to have decisions about whether a tall building's appropriate in a community. But I just wonder whether it says, planning permission will be granted for tall buildings, and it has this long list of things. And I just wonder whether there's a way of actually getting community involvement in that decision specifically, because I think for a community to take a 30-storey, a 60-storey tower, it's a big deal. I think communities are up for it if they can see benefits from it in affordable homes and that sort of thing. But the fact that nowhere under this tall buildings criteria does it kind of recognise that you might need some special involvement with the community, somebody other than planning officers interpreting what is acceptable, what is appropriate for a location of a tall building. So I've just got a real particular concern about that change to tall buildings, and I wonder if you can talk us through why that change is being made and whether there's any protection we can put, given a 60-storey development is a big difference for a community.
Okay, if we take these in the order you asked them. So on 35%, our policy is and will continue to be on 35% affordable housing. As you'll be aware, the last government changed it in the National Planning Policy Framework, subject to viability, which is a big, what the big debate is currently on delivering affordable housing. As we know previously, we, the council and developers and housing associations used to get an awful lot of grant from central government to help subsidise affordable housing and build lots of affordable housing. The last government cut that grant and that support by about 70% across the country. And what it means for developments in Southwark, where we used to get, or developers or housing associations used to get about £120,000 subsidy for every affordable unit, and they get about £20,000 subsidy. So that has obviously had a knock-on to the amount of affordable housing
Other
that
boroughs can
developers
still do 35%.
developers are offering.
That's an
What we're achieving in Southwark is some of the highest levels of affordable housing in the country. We have the second highest level of affordable housing delivery.
Hang on, let's hear the answer.
We've delivered, as a borough, the second highest level of affordable housing in the country, after Newham from memory.
When was planning permission given?
We're very clear that we want 35% affordable housing. However, because of the MPPF, which is set by the national government, by the last Conservative and Liberal Democrat government, it is subject.
You roll over to develop.
It is subject to viability. If we as a borough were to, or the planning committee was to turn down applications that came in on those grounds, that we would lose them on appeal. So we've taken. Councillor, sorry, we've taken.
Hang on, let's hear the answer.
We have taken a very pragmatic approach to securing as much affordable housing as possible, and we've delivered many, many more homes than those other boroughs that you've just mentioned. We're also very keen, and this plan is very clear, that we want them to be genuinely mixed communities as well. And the vast, overwhelming majority of new homes that are built in this borough are genuinely mixed communities. There are a few exceptions, and they are exceptions. There's less than a dozen examples in the north of the borough where one Blackfriars, for example, where if you had on-site affordable housing at rents of up to 80% of the market.
This is the last question, Anoud.
Up to 80%.
You got me back in for different bits of different questions. It doesn't make for a helpful debate. You ask one question, then you keep interrupting as the answer is being given. So we'll hear the answer, we'll finish the answer. If you have another question, you can have one more question, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Chair. So one Blackfriars, for example, if there'd been on-site affordable housing there, because it's a single core building because of the design, anything, 80% of market rents, or even if we got it capped at local LHA rents, they would have been extraordinarily expensive and would not have been affordable for people in this borough. We're just being honest in accepting that. In addition, the service charges people would have been charged, even if we'd managed to get social rents there, would have tipped them to being completely unaffordable. Instead, we took an in lieu payment, which is paying for brand new council houses. Those few developments I've mentioned in the north of the borough along the river have generated a fund so far of around about £150 million, every penny of which is being spent on new council homes that will be at council rents on council tenancies, with many of those being built in the north of the borough. We've got some down the corner, around the corner down on Long Lane, we've got some over in Bermondsey, and we're always looking for more sites, and as we've said to every councillor, if you've got any ideas for sites, please do let us know. So on that front, we're just being pragmatic and realistic that if we secured affordable housing on those few sites, like one Blackfriars, we just simply would not be delivering meaningful affordable housing, and instead we're securing many more homes that are council homes that are genuinely affordable, which is what our residents want.
Okay.
On tall buildings,
yeah, go on.
On tall buildings, your second question. The policy, there are very clear criteria here. There are 12 criteria that I can count in DM12 on page 43 for how we assess tall buildings and what we want them to contribute to the local area. What we're being clear about is that assessing what a tall building is how it sits into its local context, because every bit of the borough is different to every other bit of the borough. A tall building in Dulwich will be at a different height to a tall building where we are here, or over at the top end of Blackfriars, which you just mentioned. So it's about having that more sensible criteria that recognise that different parts of the borough are different, but it's also about being clear they have to be exceptional design quality, and that's not just for planning officers to take a view on, it's for local residents, local members of the community to have a view on during the consultation that the developers themselves run, but also during the statutory planning consultation, and then for members of the planning committee to take a view on as well, to make sure we are getting the right quality buildings that aren't just tall for the sake of it, but that they are tall and that they deliver benefits for our residents, whether that's increased public realm, ground floor, whether it's new affordable homes. It's there's a whole plethora of benefits that can deliver there. And to be absolutely honest, with the way that the funding is nationally for affordable homes, we do need some sort of buildings to help us build the affordable homes we need in our borough, and that's just the world we live in.
Okay.
But also they do bring genuine benefits, additional workspace, and there's a whole list.
Okay. Okay. Right. Maisie.
Can I come back now? No. Missed my chance.
You've missed your chance, Maisie.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So when it comes to planning, I think we all know there's no shortage of policies that all interact with each other, national, London, borough, obviously, and then, even more granular down to area action plans, etc. you've already mentioned quite a few instances where this plan may sort of clash or in effect not be exactly the same as what we have in a national context. I wonder if there are any other kind of key flashpoints you can see in this plan that you've put together between what we're hoping for in Southwark and what is being prescribed at a national level, and what kind of teeth you've put into this document or plan to that will allow kind of the Southwark Planning Committee and the Southwark planners to be able to get the best outcome for our residents in the face of a really potentially hostile national framework.
Potentially, I think I wish it was potentially. Unfortunately, it is very much so. I think the big one is housing, which we've already mentioned, and what is affordable housing. As I said earlier, our view is that social rent is affordable housing. This plan and elements of this plan can actually be overruled by the Mayor before we adopt it. Fortunately, that point is after May this year, so hopefully the right result, that won't happen. I think the affordable housing, the approach to affordable housing is the big one that we're worried about, and the government's definition of affordable homes is completely nonsensical. And what's even more worrying, regardless of what we put in this plan, and we'll put, this excellent, well, all the policies in here are excellent to make sure we get the right development in our borough, but the clauses in the Housing and Planning Bill give the Secretary of State, if it's passed, the power to just say, Southwark Planning Committee, ignore all those policies. We don't like them. It's such a centralising bill, and it makes a complete mockery of local government and all the devolution agenda that the Chancellor and others in the government are talking up at the moment. So I think that's the real big challenge, is that if the bill goes through, it really could substantially undermine our ability to secure the types of homes and development that we need. I don't think I'm over-egging putting that in my planning officer.
Okay. Paul.
I've got lots of questions,
Well,
but I will limit them.
Okay.
First of all, it's a comment on something that Councillor Dale said earlier. It is important, I think, that when we produce and present this document to our constituents, that they understand where it fits within the policy. Because there are so many conversations that happen about planning applications in my ward that don't really seem to understand how all these things interlock, and indeed why would they. I think there's a great job of work to be done about a very, as Councillor Johnson said, a very accessible document, so it's very easy to read, that should be there, and people understanding its role as a strategic vision, and I think that communicating that is really important. Two completely unrelated questions, one of which is around the affordable homes element. And moving away from the sort of conventional conversations about the levels of provision and where that all comes from, there's not a conversation under the affordable homes bit that I've seen about setting a strategy around the aesthetics of them. And one of the conversations that we're having on the Aylesbury, as a particular example, is around. I think it's particularly important that we ensure that some of the communal areas, some of the social housing, has access to the amazing views that people currently have on the Aylesbury of the City of London and the rest of the borough. We do make reference to that in other contexts within the plan, and I think that's important to do it. It may well be said that that's too specific a requirement, but if you contrast that to something else, which, again, talking about an Aylesbury context, we specifically mention secured by design principles, which is quite, it can be very, very specific to an area, a building, and so on, to be actually in the strategic plan under the crime section of reducing crime. And that's an area where actually I'm not sure whether it is helpful to have it in the strategic vision. Again, on the Aylesbury, we're talking about areas which are being locked off. We're talking about a great tension between the desire of those who articulate secured by design principles in a particular circumstance, and actually our wider agenda of making a community generally feel safer and building something that's a bit more collegiate and so on. If you build a tower block in the middle of the Aylesbury now, it's going to be there. So that's question number one in terms of ranking those two specifics. That was two questions that I carefully put into one. What were the other question is completely and utterly unrelated, and is very brief and straightforward. I should declare a degree of bias in it. In my full-time job, I'm a full-time official for Equity and Performance Trades Union. But we talk about economic viability in terms of the strategy for lots and lots of businesses. We separate out a leisure, arts and culture strategy from a community use strategy, which is excellent, and lots of us don't do that when they're talking about leisure and culture. But actually we don't talk about the economic viability of those of those arts spaces when we do in the context of other businesses and so on. And would you look at it to ensure my members can get paid adequate wages? And the artists who live in this way.
Thank you for declaring the interest before we get into trouble with yeah, I mean, we want whether it's affordable housing or private housing, or indeed office accommodation, etc. We want anything built in this borough to be of the right quality and of the right design standard. And hopefully that comes out in this plan. And if it's not clear enough, then that's something we can have a look at tightening up. And also secured by design as well should be similar. On access to the common areas and places with nice views, I think that comes down to more of a case-by-case basis. What we are clear about in here is that we don't want the poor door phenomenon, where for reasons of management or having service charges, avoiding service charges that are so high, you're making what should be an affordable unit unaffordable, is that sometimes those facilities are different and separate, but you don't have the entrance to the social homes, round the back by the bin store. That's not what we're interested in this borough. There are also some instances where access to specific viewing platforms or common areas high up will be different. And use the example of the One Tower Bridge development over the road there. There was an amendment to the Section 106 sought by City of London Corporation to make sure that the service charges were a bit lower for their social tenants, which meant they didn't get access to one lot of views, but they got access to other views of the Thames and Tower Bridge to try to balance it off. So I think that's about us doing that on a case-by-case basis. On culture and the economic viability of new theatres and other cultural spaces, I think that more comes down to the individual putting in the application. Having more theatres and more performance space in the borough is something that we're very keen on, and we are actively working on to get more in the borough. The New London Theatre Company coming to, again, one Tower Bridge is an example, 900-seat theatre, absolutely fantastic space. But I think it's more for those individual developers and to set out their own stall to make sure that something they're building is economically viable, rather than us necessarily mandating that through the planning process, because if it wasn't viable or they didn't have grant support for it, etc., they wouldn't build it, would be my take on that.
Okay, I'm going to take that as the end of that answer for that, because we do have people waiting for the last agenda item, and people do need to get home this evening as well, but some people are travelling further afield than this borough is what I'm saying. So thank you for the answers to the questions that we've had this evening, and thank you for the presentation at the start. I'm going to call a close to this item now. I'm going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which